Hello, welcome to Wednesday Live with Anton Gunn. It is Wu-Tang Wednesday. Everybody knows it's 2 p.m. East Coast time, 11 a.m. Pacific, and to everybody in the Central Mountain Time Zone and all across the world, you know it's time to get in where you fit in. I'm so excited about being with you today, and I'm going to do something different today as a part of this conversation. I get asked a lot of questions as a keynote speaker and as a consultant. I work with big companies like Fortune 500 companies, and I work with small organizations. But the thing that I enjoy almost as much as anything is going to a conference and speaking live from stage for an hour to help leaders to become better leaders, to build a better culture, or to really become the leader that everyone will admire. And I got lots of training and lots of content that I teach around those particular subjects. But one of the things that happens every time that I give a keynote speech is that I walk off stage and I have a long line of people, many times a crowd of people who want to talk to me after the event. Now, some people just want to know, hey, can I buy a book from you? Can you autograph my book? A lot of people want to take photographs and want to take selfies. And if you know anything about me, you know I'm 6'5", and a lot of people want to take selfies, but my arms are longer than them. So I usually end up holding their camera and taking the selfie for them, which I don't mind at all. But outside of taking pictures, getting autographs, I get asked a lot of questions, lots of questions. And sometimes these questions are about my presentation, and other times they go to some deeper issues. And one of the deeper issues that I always get asked about is around the role of leadership and culture. What should leaders be doing now? What can I be doing differently? What can I be doing better? What do I need to do to change my culture? What do I do to have influence? Well, what I would like to do today is to put on the screen and to answer for you 5 questions, just 5. You might want to take notes on this, but if you're not in a position to take notes, don't worry. This is going to stay up on this platform for perpetuity. I won't pull it down at all because I think it's important for me to add as much value to people as possible. So here are 5 questions about leadership and about culture that I've been asked repeatedly over and over again. And in different iterations, I've had to answer those questions. So now I'm going to short circuit all of your research, all of the stuff that you think you need to do to be a leader who knows how to build culture in your organization, to be a better leader. I'm going to short circuit all of that by giving you these 5 questions and answering them live for you right now in the next few minutes. Okay. So let me just go ahead and get it up on the screen, and we're going to show you 5 culture questions answered right here for you by Anton Gunn. And yes, that is a picture of me on stage at an event speaking and holding my hand up 5, but I wasn't answering 5 questions, but I did have my hand up like I was saying 5. Okay, so let's get to question number 1. We're going to do some Q&A, and if you have other questions, I want you to drop them into the comments. I want to be able to see if there are other questions that you need me to answer in real time as I walk through these. So here's question number 1. How can leaders influence company culture as it relates to morale, mental wellness, attitude, inclusion, which obviously leads to overall performance, retention, et cetera? So how can a leader influence company culture as it relates to all of these things? Well, it's very simple. If you want to be an influential leader, then you have to become a better leader. John Maxwell has this great quote that says, everything rises and falls on leadership. And then he has a secondary quote that says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So if you want to be more influential, you have to become a better leader. You have to invest in yourself in being a better leader. You have to learn what it takes to be a great leader. And as I said to you last time we were in a session, you can't just look to the bad examples that we've all had in the workplace. Yes, some of us have worked for good leaders, but so many more of us have worked for bad leaders. And when we start looking for an example of leadership, we look to that bad boss that we have above us and we repeat those same bad behaviors. So, what am I telling you to do? I'm telling you, you got to seek out the right sources if you want to be a good leader. You got to know, what is a world-class leader? What is a leader that everybody admires? A leader that people look up to around the world. And I've asked you to think about that. Can you name 5 leaders that you look up to? 5 leaders that you admire? And what are the qualities about those people? What make them great leaders? What makes them inspirational to others? Now, if you want to know more about how you can embody the characteristics of a leader that has the level of influence that improves the culture, morale, and increases performance in an organization, I want you to go to antongunn.com/toolkit and download my Just Lead Toolkit. In that toolkit, I lay out for you the 10 qualities of a world-class leader, the 10 qualities that are embodied by some of the most admired leaders on the planet Earth, people that we all revere. So I encourage you to go to antongunn.com/toolkit, because you got to become a better leader if you want to become more influential. And let me be clear, before you start trying to change your organization, you got to change yourself. You got to improve yourself. And once you improve yourself, the second step is work on your team. Don't try to change the whole company. Don't try to influence the entire company's culture until you've changed yourself and you become influential on your team. So if you're on a team of 5, you need to become the most influential, thus the best leader on that team of 5. If you're on a team of 25, you need to become the most influential, thus the best leader on your team of 25. So if you want to influence company culture, you can't start big. You got to start small. You got to control what you can control. And many times you can control yourself and your behaviors and your actions and how you think about things. And you can influence the team that you're on. That's my first piece of advice to you. Question number 1 is how to influence company culture. Just become a better leader. Find good resources like my Just Lead Toolkit, like my books, like all of the great books out there that teach you leadership skills. Follow the good examples, the right examples, and not the bad examples. Okay, let's jump to question number 2. An audience member at a recent event asked, how do we actually create a culture? What's my best answer or advice? My best answer or advice on how you create culture is you have to start with your values. Now, when I say values, here's what I want you to understand. We all have values. What are your values? Like, what's your moral code, your moral compass, your internal guideposts? What are the things that you will always do? And what are the things you will never do? You got to know your values. You got to know your moral code. Now, at work, your company has a moral code. Your company has a stated set of values. Your company has a mission and some value statements that they put on the wall everywhere, right? And so if you want to create a culture, you have to live by those values every day. If there's ever a day that goes by in your company and you don't live by those values, then you're going to fracture and destroy your culture. So let's say your company's values was always put the customer first. Well, how can you embody that value? You can do your job to always put your customers first. Now, let's be clear. You have internal customers and you have external customers. Your internal customer is your team. Your team are your customers. They're coming to you looking for something, and your job is to deliver what they need. So you have to always put your team first if you're going to put your customers first. And of course, your external customer, your external stakeholder is the customer themselves. It could be your suppliers. It could be the community that you're in. So if you want to build a company culture, if you want to create a great culture, it starts with your values. You got to have great values and you got to live by those values. You got to be consistent in those values. And if you're not consistent with your values, it's impossible to build a great company culture. You can't create culture. The second part of culture is how you communicate what you communicate. What are the words that you use in your organization? Do you have an affirming culture that use positive words? Or is there a culture where everybody in the offices curses all day and nobody cares about dropping a 4-letter word here or there? That's a culture. Some companies thrive on that kind of culture. Other people will never have it. Do you have a culture of ostracism, which is you haze new people when they come to work? You don't invite them to the company lunch, or you hide their chair for them when they come to work, so they can't figure out where they need to sit. That's part of culture. So you got to decide which practices you want to create and which practices you don't want to create. It's totally up to you. So my second question is, you want to build company culture, start with your values, start with your communication, and then thirdly, focus on the behaviors and actions that you want people to live every day. And you got to start living those. Okay. Question number 3. What's one thing a leader should start doing and stop doing in order to be most effective? What's one thing a leader should start doing and stop doing to be most effective? The first thing a leader can start doing to be most effective is investing in their professional development. You have to remember that you don't know it all. You're not as great as you think you are. You're not as smart as you want to be. You have to continue to get better, and you need professional development to do that. You need to take classes and courses, go to conferences, be in your professional association. If you're not doing these things anymore, or if you're not doing them consistently, you need to start investing in your professional development. You got to do that right now. That's what you need to start doing. Now, what you need to stop doing, you need to stop undermining your people, and you need to stop being the boss and be the leader. Now, what do I mean? Sometimes people like bossing people around. They like being in control. They like telling people what to do. They like controlling or undermining a situation, or just heavy-handed in the situation, micromanaging. You need to stop doing all of those things, but you need to become a leader that mentors people. You need to become a leader that supports your team. You should have 5 to 7 mentees every year in your workplace. If you don't, then you're not doing the job of a leader. You got to be effective. And if you want to be effective, you got to be a mentor. So again, that's my number 3 for you. Okay. Let me jump to question number 4. With so many workforces working remotely, what is an effective way for leaders to communicate with remote teams? How can they ensure employees feel included, engaged, and motivated? This might be the most important question in the year 2023. With so many organizations having remote teams, people all over the planet. Your workforce was all in one city, and now all of a sudden you're representing 30 different states, or 20 different cities. It can be any kind of framework where you've gone to this remote workplace. And it's really hard to build a culture and communicate effectively when you got people in different time zones, when you got people who only log on for a meeting, that there's no more seeing Bob in the parking lot, or you don't pass Jane at the coffee pot in the morning, or you don't see Tim on the elevator, and you don't see Missy as she's heading to lunch. You don't see and have these kind of interactions anymore. And so because of that, you don't connect with your team. It's really hard to build culture. it's really hard to communicate. It's really hard to keep people on the same page. So here are my few simple tips of what you should do if you want to build an effective remote culture. As a matter of fact, I wrote a couple LinkedIn articles about this specific thing on how to build strong remote teams. So here's the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is number one, you should make sure that you have a standing staff meeting with your team. If you have a remote team, there should not be a 5-day work week to go by that you don't have a meeting where everybody in your team joins the meeting. That's the first thing. And when they join that meeting, you make sure that nobody has their camera off, that everybody needs to have their camera on. And so if they have a computer or a laptop where they can't be on camera, that's not acceptable. You got to build a culture where people can see each other. And yeah, there will be a time or two when somebody's face is not made up or their hair is not done or maybe they haven't gotten dressed yet. But if you establish the culture is that our virtual team meeting is cameras on, face in the picture. You got to create that kind of environment. That's the first thing you need to do. The second thing, you got to make sure that that meeting is not all business all the time. So what do I mean, not all business all the time? I believe that the first 15 minutes of your meeting should be kind of like getting to know people or a check-in meeting, if you will, or something lighthearted. So for instance, I onboarded a new client today, and we had our first meeting with the client's full team of people that I'm going to be working with over the next 6 months to improve their culture and to do some diversity and inclusion work. So I started the session by saying, okay, everybody, tell me your name, tell me what you do, tell me the high school that you graduated from and your mascot of your high school. And then I also want you to tell me what was your favorite candy bar growing up? Like if you only had 50 cents and you were 6 years old and you could go to the store and get a candy bar for 50 cents, which candy bar are you choosing to buy? And so I had everybody on the meeting to go around to say their name, their job, where they graduated from high school and the mascot and their favorite candy bar. And it literally only took 10 minutes to go around to a group of 8 or 9. And what did that do? It gave me a chance to learn about where people are really from, that not everybody lives where they grew up and they work in a different place than where they spent their teenage years. And everybody learned what favorite candy bar people have. And some people don't even eat candy bars anymore, but you kind of take them back to their childhood when they can eat a candy bar. It was so insightful to learn. And then after 15 minutes, we went on with our business of the day. So I'm telling you right now that if you want to engage your team, you got to start with that weekly meeting. Now, here are 2 other things that I'm going to tell you to do if you want to be a great leader who can engage and keep communication high on your team. In addition to the weekly meeting, you need to set a one-on-one 20-minute meeting with every person that directly reports to you each week. So everybody on your team knows that they got 2 Zoom meetings with the boss each week. Number 1 is the staff meeting, and number 2 is the scheduled one-on-one. Now, if you telling me right now that you got too many direct reports, that you don't have time to do a 20-minute meeting with each person that directly reports to you, I'm going to tell you that you have a bad organizational chart because your span of control should be no more than 5 people. If you got 10 people reporting to you, you got problems. You're ineffective as a leader if you got 10 people reporting to you. But if you have 5 direct reports, that's a good size. I would even say it should be smaller. But you should be able to spend 20 minutes with each one of those direct reports as a check-in meeting. If you also want to increase communication and engagement and morale and keeping people motivated, here's the third thing you need to do. You need to have one more virtual meeting a week, but make it on a Friday maybe a Thursday would be fine. And it's a 90-minute meeting that is optional for people to join. And they join it as a happy hour meeting. It's not all about work. It's not all about the projects to do. It's not all about revenue goals, whatever, but it's a place for people to get on and have like a virtual water cooler. If you create that kind of environment and let people know that I'm going to be on for 90 minutes, no matter what, on Thursday evening from 3:30 to 5, and what I'm going to be doing when I get on is I'm going to do home show and tell. Like, you got to make yourself like a tourist attraction for your team to want to log in. So what is home show and tell? Is you find something on your home office desk or your office desk, or maybe in your background, and you start telling stories about what you have. So one example for that for me is that this is my home office, and everybody sees the hip hop records that I got behind me. Everybody sees them. And they want to see what my figurines. They see my Black Panther doll, my Spider-Man, my Incredible Hulk. They see Beast from the X-Men. So they see all of these things behind me, but they have no idea why I have them back there. So I would be happy to do show and tell to tell you, why do I have Black Panther, the Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, and Beast from the X-Men behind me? Those are the only Marvel characters I have behind me. The other character that I have back there is Man at Arms from He-Man and Masters of the Universe. So why? These are all great things that you can do to make yourself as a leader more interesting to your team. And in that same 90 minutes of the happy hour Zoom, you can have your nice favorite non-alcoholic beverage, and they can bring theirs too. And you can give people on your team who join the opportunity to do show and tell in what's in their background. You learn about each other. You engage more deeply. And sometimes some people will be more motivated to come to this meeting than they are your staff meeting and your one-on-one meeting. But because you did this free-flowing happy hour meeting, it engages them more deeply, and they want to stay on the team and participate in everything that you have. So that's what I encourage you to do. If you want to, again, keep up with remote employees, disconnected employees, this is a great tool and process for you to use. Now let's get to the last question as I close us out today. Question number 5 is, what should leaders be doing differently today that wasn't even on their radar screen 5 years ago? Now, let's be clear. I could probably do a whole hour-long session on what leaders should be doing differently today that they weren't doing 5 years ago. Just think about 5 years ago, the things that you were doing as a leader and how the world has changed. So I will tell you this. Here's what leaders should be doing differently that wasn't even on their radar screen 5 years ago. The first thing you need to be doing is you need to develop a skill set and an expertise in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And let me add 2 more words: belonging and accessibility. So let me put it all together for you. You need to develop a competency, and that means knowing what these terms mean and how they relate to your workforce: diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging. You need to know what those terms mean, competency, and a skill set around those same terms. So how do you manage diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and accessibility in your workforce? How do you manage that on your team? How do you build an inclusive culture, an accessible culture, a culture where people feel like they belong? That's what you should be doing differently today that I know you weren't doing 5 years ago, because there was no mandate to do it 5 years ago. But I'm telling you right now, 35% of your workforce is expecting this today. And another 15% is making a decision whether to stay or leave, whether you have a competency and skill set around those terms. Here's a second thing. This is probably going to sound obvious given where we are today, but you need to equip yourself with knowledge around artificial intelligence. and how it is helping your workforce to be more productive and effective, augmenting what they do every day, and how you can better utilize it to deliver for your team. Like, you literally should be using artificial intelligence to understand what are the top 10 ways I can engage my workforce so that nobody wants to quit. And hopefully at the top of your chat GPT inquiry, they say, hire Anton Gunn, work with Anton Gunn, follow Anton Gunn on YouTube and LinkedIn, because my whole mission is focused on to help you to engage your workforce. Now, the second thing, or the third thing, if you will, that I think leaders should have on their radar screen today and should be doing today that they weren't doing before is to be 100% authentic and transparent about what you think about social issues. Like, literally, when I say social issues, I'm talking gay marriage, abortion, guns and assault rifles, all of these things that have been taboo for leaders to talk about. Those are personal to me. Why would you want me to talk about my personal stuff in the workforce? Well, the reason why I'm telling you to do that is because all of your employees are asking. You just don't hear them asking. They want to know, do I work in an organization that believes that everyone should have the opportunity to see their kids when they get home in the evening? Or do I work for a boss who believes that everybody should have as many guns as possible and we should do nothing to mitigate the loss of life that happens in school shootings? Do I work for a boss that doesn't care about the reproductive rights of my daughter, my wife, my nieces and my nieces? Do I work for a boss who believes these things versus other things? You wondering? I'm telling you, your team is asking those questions. So my advice to you, what leaders should be doing differently today that wasn't on their radar 5 years ago: diversity, equity, and inclusion, straight up. Artificial intelligence, straight up. And thirdly, is being transparent and authentic about what you think about social issues and what your company thinks about those issues. Because you're an individual, but your company should be thinking about those issues, including the environment. So I hope this added value to you today. I'm getting ready to sign off. If you like this video, you like this content, I want you to share this video with someone that you know who needs it. I want you to subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you're following me, and so you can get this fresh new content as soon as it come out every week. And I will see you all next Wednesday for the next session of Live with Anton Gunn. Everybody have a fantastic day.